In our previous episode, the guide was pissed upon realizing it was Lu Sheng who took all the energy crystals, but that anger quickly shifted to intrigue after seeing what our boy was capable of. Soon, martial saints from all corners of the world were on the move. Just as they were about to use Snowy as leverage against him, that's when our boy showed up. Cumberland snapped his head up, only to see a figure slowly rising into the sky. His fists clenched as he stared, and he could tell it was definitely Lu Sheng. However, he noted something that felt off and remarked that it looked too hazy. After a moment, he realized this was just Lu Sheng's spiritual projection. Before he could even react, the projection was already in front of him. With a single punch, a shockwave exploded across the ocean's surface. Oddly enough, Cumberland didn't get blown away. Instead, what came next froze everyone in place. Floating in the air behind him was a transparent copy of Cumberland himself. The scene felt surreal, almost like his soul had left his body. The surrounding martial saints were shocked, but they weren't slow to catch on that our boy's spirit projection had actually struck Cumberland's martial soul right out of his body. Cumberland panicked and cried out for the guide to save him. With just a flick of the guide's finger, Cumberland's martial soul snapped back into his body. He gasped for air, drenched in cold sweat but grateful to be alive. The other martial saints were completely bamboozled, and they quickly realized Lu Sheng had grown strong enough to casually destroy someone's martial soul, and by now, the 9th-level body they once thought so untouchable now felt like a cruel joke. The guide, meanwhile, remarked that it was no wonder the 9th levels of this planet seemed like playthings to someone like him. Lu Sheng responds with a smile, already recognizing the man as the so-called guide. Then, without hesitation, he draws back a fist and begins charging up for a strike. The guide seems briefly puzzled by the sudden move, and just as everyone braces for impact, the guide simply reaches out and taps Lu Sheng on the forehead. A strange pulse of energy spreads out from that single point, visible even to the naked eye. The resulting shockwave instantly sends the surrounding martial saints flying, but Lu Sheng doesn't stop and he keeps attacking. Yet no matter what he throws, the guide simply deflects each move effortlessly. Out of nowhere, the guide finally struck back, landing a solid punch right on his face and sending him skidding back several meters. With a mocking look, the guide questioned if that was really all Lu Sheng had, suggesting that maybe it was better for him to just give up. But our boy simply smiled and said the warm-up was finally over. Not far from the yacht, the ocean slowly parted as a whirlpool formed, and from within it, the real Lu Sheng emerged. At this point, he was certain this man standing before him was the very same 10th level that Zhao Ji had once summoned. With a wave of psychic energy, Lu Sheng gently lifted Snowy into the air, sending her toward a safe distance. He then turned his gaze to the guide and asked if this was all just about the energy crystals. The guide responded with a smile, confirming that it was. He explained that if Lu Sheng could hand over 400 kilograms, then they wouldn't need to fight. He even suggested that way Lu Sheng could continue being the peak of humanity on this planet. As Lu Sheng landed lightly on the yacht, the surrounding martial saints were stunned. They couldn't believe the guide wasn't punishing Lu Sheng for breaking the rules. In fact, it almost sounded like he admired him. Some couldn't hide their frustration, realizing that if things continued this way, they'd forever be beneath him. But our boy made it clear that he wasn't someone who could be talked down with a few flattering words. He then offered the guide a simpler method, which was that if he could kill him, then all the crystals would be his. That answer shocked everyone, and Cumberland could hardly believe it. The guide had already been so generous, not only letting the rule-breaking slide, leaving him some energy crystals, and even giving him a way out, and this was the response he got. Even the guide seemed unsure if he'd heard correctly. He asked Lu Sheng one more time if he was serious. Lu Sheng looked annoyed, questioning if he had spent all his life training as a wimp, and he questioned why else would he be dragging things out just to throw a punch. The guide froze after hearing this, and the entire world seemed to go completely still for a moment. That insult of calling the guide a wimp replayed over and over, and clearly the guide didn't appreciate being called that. Then, with a clenched jaw and veins bulging across his body, the guide's power erupted. The ground rumbled, volcanoes below began to boil, and the sunny skies above turned dark in an instant. Thunder rolled across the clouds. Even fishermen miles away dropped to their knees, convinced they had angered the sea god himself. Cumberland gulped nervously and he muttered that while ninth-level martial saints could resonate with the heavens, causing a shift in nature like this was on another level entirely. He concludes by saying this was probably what true star-level martial artists looked like. Even from a safe distance, Snowy couldn't help but worry about her man. Meanwhile, the guide's energy continued to climb, but Lu Sheng stared him down without blinking. He asked if this was really all he had. Then, as if to hammer it in, he tossed the insult again, and that's when the guide snapped. Furious, he gritted his teeth and said Lu Sheng must be punished. Before anyone could react, the guide vanished, then instantly reappeared in front of Lu Sheng. He drove 2 fingers straight into his abdomen, and the force behind the strike was so intense that his head snapped back. What followed was him getting blasted across the sky like a cannonball. The martial saints looked on, realizing this was what true 10th-level power meant. Someone even muttered that no matter how strong Lu Sheng was, even at the peak of humanity, he couldn't possibly stand up to that kind of force, adding that it looked like Lu Sheng would be reduced to nothing more than scorched remains. The guide called Lu Sheng a fool, declaring that now he must surely understand the gap between them. And yet, not far away, Lu Sheng's burned body slowly began to move. He raised his head, looked at the man, and calmly remarked, "This was more like it." Now he could almost believe the guy wasn't just some wimp, after all. His body was still smoking when tiny cracks began to spread across his skin, all the while casually remarking that the guide's strikes felt more like a massage. A moment later, his body rapidly healed, but he was disappointed how weak the attack was. No sooner had those words left him than a burst of energy just as powerful as the guide's surged from his body. Without hesitation, Lu Sheng launched himself forward, declaring that he was about to show the guide what real pain felt like. The guide looked genuinely caught off guard, and the next second our boy's fist was already swinging toward him, and this time Lu Sheng poured everything into it. Every last drop of energy, every immortal cell, backed by his immortal stellar body. Feeling danger close in, the guide didn't dare hold back. He quickly gathered his energy, forming a protective barrier in front of himself. But in the very next instant, that shield shattered like glass. Lu Sheng's fist connected cleanly, blasting him backward several meters. The guide's face twisted in disbelief, and he questioned how it was even possible for someone from this primitive planet to wield such power. But he didn't have time to process it. Lu Sheng was already chasing after him again, grinning as he unleashed a storm of blows. He notes that burning through all 365 of his immortal cells felt amazing, so powerful it was almost hard to control, and adds that he had been waiting for a battle like this for far too long. To our boy, the cruelest fate wasn't defeat, but the loneliness of being unmatched. Just like that, our boy went full JoJo style. The guide struggled to block each strike, but Lu Sheng seemed to be getting more fired up by the second. He suggests that no matter how tough one gets, everyone still needs the right punching bag. And right now, the guide is filling that role perfectly. The martial saints could barely keep their eyes open through the shockwaves. Even from a distance, every collision between the two forced them to retreat further. Cumberland couldn't wrap his head around it and muttered that Lu Sheng hadn't even used half his strength when dealing with them earlier. Meanwhile, Tan Zhongyue stared in awe, admitting this level of power was beyond anything they could ever survive, believing that a single hit would mean instant death. The guide, hearing himself referred to as a punching bag, finally snapped. He warned Lu Sheng not to push his luck. A massive burst of energy exploded from his body. Gasping for breath, the guide clarified that Lu Sheng wasn't 10th level, nor was he 9th level, and he revealed he was only at the peak of 8th level. Then he corrected himself and declared that Lu Sheng was actually an extraordinary life form. That claim once again shocked the martial saints, and they couldn't believe our boy was only an 8th level. As for what an extraordinary life form even meant, none of them had the faintest clue. The guide, however, grinned as if pleased by the discovery. He explained that Lu Sheng's terrifying strength could only be explained by this, and he reasoned that nothing else could account for an 8th-level strike with such terrifying power. He notes how he hadn't expected to find a treasure like this on a mere level 1 resource planet. Meanwhile, our boy, not familiar with all this terminology, asked what exactly he meant. The guide patiently explained. It was a leap in life's innate foundation, an evolution of the genes, a gift bestowed by the universe itself, adding that it's a rare and precious phenomenon across the stars. Our boy thought the explanation sounded like a whole lot of nothing, but even so, He could roughly guess what the guy meant. Most likely, he was referring to the immortal stellar body which had fundamentally changed our boy from the moment he started practicing it. From that point forward, he had become something beyond human, and now with the addition of immortal cells, needless to say, our boy is at a completely different level. The guide finally broke the silence with a smile, saying it made sense that Lu Sheng had reached such heights, and he suggested that someone like him was never meant to stay grounded on this small planet, and believed that he was born for the universe. Raising a hand, he surprises everyone by saying he no longer intends to take the energy crystals, and he wants our boy to keep them, but in return, he wanted to take him somewhere else. When asked where exactly that would be, internally what frustrated him the most was the guide clearly didn't want to fight anymore, and he remarked it felt like a bucket of cold water dumped over his fighting spirit. The guide calmly explains that he intends to bring Lu Sheng into a bigger world because he believes this planet is far too small and stifling for someone like him. But Lu Sheng just cut him off and said what he wanted now was a real fight. The guide pauses, then seems to understand. He figures Lu Sheng is craving pressure. He comments that with a foundation as deep as an extraordinary life form, Lu Sheng's growth rate far exceeded that of ordinary martial artists. But precisely because of that, breaking through to a higher level would demand unimaginable pressure, something this planet simply couldn't provide. So without another word, the guide, now officially introducing himself as Lan Chen, starts to gather his energy once more. He tells Lu Sheng that he'll give him the pressure he needs, and between that and the energy crystals, Lu Sheng now owes him 2 favors, and he needs to repay him in the near future. As the air around him crackles, Lan Chen removes his disguise, revealing his true appearance. Lu Sheng stared for a moment, frowning slightly as he genuinely couldn't tell if this person was a man or a woman. He quietly wonders if this is what they meant by femboy. Lan Chen warns him to brace himself, saying what was coming next would be the true strength of a 10th level. Our boy's eyes lit up with excitement, and he tells him to come at him with everything he got. With that, he charged forward at the same time Lan Chen unleashed his first strike. As the energy blast hit, he blocked with both of his hands. After a blinding light, our boy lifted his head, and he found himself in a strange state. He could sense the power swirling around him, and he notes it's the connection to the world itself. He remarked, it wasn't just raw power, rather it was legacy. It was the essence of what it meant to be 10th level, and in that very moment, he finally understood. With a big smile on his face, he shouted one thing to the heavens, saying this is exactly the kind of fight he lives for.